Hello, welcome to the podcast, Human Rights in America, a Revolutionary Mindset. I am your host, Sue Young. Well, we've come to the last days of 2024. And like everything else, let's talk year-end stats for the podcast. But first, here are some simple numbers for those of you who want to start a podcast in 2025. 90% of podcasts don't make it past episode 3. 90% quit after episode 20. They say people quit when they discover that they don't like an aspect of the podcast. Plus, you have to be creative and committed. When I first started this podcast, people asked me if I would do it weekly. I was like, heck no, because there was no way that I had enough creative energy or time to do a weekly podcast. Every 2 weeks seems workable for now. If ever there's a need to do something else, then I'll do it. But for now, it's every 2 weeks. Current status. You need to publish 21 episodes to be in the top 1% of the world's podcasts. Guess what? Human Rights in America, a Revolutionary Mindset, has 22 episodes. Wow, I'm in the top 1%. I thought that I only had 20 episodes, but I had an episode about an introduction to myself, and I didn't label the earlier episodes because I just didn't know I should. So I have 22 episodes. It all counts. I'm in the top 1% of the world. That is an amazing feat, especially for someone who did not even want to start a podcast and someone who didn't think that she had anything to say. I am not afraid to form a line, even if I'm by myself. We all have to do or give something, our time, our money, our creative energy, our actions to something that is for the good of others. That's why my word for the next year is philanthropist. By definition, a philanthropist is a person who seeks to promote the welfare of others by donating their time, talent, or resources to a cause, area, or a social issue to create meaningful change. Yes, most people think of a wealthy donor when they think of the word philanthropist. Well, because I fit the rest of the definition, I think I'll insert this on my resume and on LinkedIn account. This word may not matter to my future employers, but it means everything to me. In fact, confession, I smile when I say it. I care. I feel elated after completing every episode of this podcast, not just because one is done in the bag, but because I've committed to another episode of doing something. Simply by giving me your attention for 15 to 20 minutes every 2 weeks, I learn, and thus you may learn something new, or at least a new way to consider a topic. Top 5 cities. Secondly, I have a list of the most popular cities based on the number of downloads. First place is a total shocker to me. It's none other than the windy city of Chicago, Illinois. Yay, I can't believe it. Congratulations. You are my number 1 fans with 155 downloads. Shout out to Chicago. Next up, Bloomington, Illinois. I know for a fact that there are some serious and committed listeners in Bloomington. I know because they email me early in the morning the next day after I publish. They listen, they repeat it, and they get it. Thank you, Sandy. Third place is, drumroll, Denver, Colorado. It's great to see Denver on the list, the city where I went to law school. I thank my Denver family and my friends. See you soon. The other cities rounding out the top 5 is Peoria, Illinois, my hometown, which is full of family and longtime friends. Finally, number 5 is Bayonne, New Jersey. Hey, they're listening. Thank you all. I do this for you and for me. And here's to other friends who listen in New York, Phoenix, Houston, LA, and Atlanta, and Florida. Listen, subscribe, listen again, and pass it on to a friend. It may be exactly what they need. Thanks again. So, my why. I published all of these episodes this year, April of 2024. I did this to honor my deceased aunt, my Aunt Sharon, who was one of my top fans. I started the podcast in April for her birthday. Here's to you, Aunt Sharon. The next category is the number of countries that listen. Okay, honestly, how many countries do you think listen to me? Honestly, I'm waiting for an answer. How many do you think? 1 or 2? No, 9 countries listen to me around the world. I really thought only 2 or 3, but I have friends in other countries. So the top 5 countries include the United States. Great job, home team, because I do this for you. But the others are kind of a surprise to me. Singapore, which I know no one there. Australia. Yeah, my Aussie friends, especially to the girls who I travel with to Switzerland. Thanks for listening. And others that I work with. Thank you. People in France. Merci beaucoup. And the United Kingdom. Wow, this is awesome. This is actually an international podcast geared for all listeners. This podcast is like pulling back the curtain to hear how things are really going on in America. You'll hear it here. Listening, keep listening, leave a review, and email me at hrinamerica@gmail.com. This is a quick little tidbit about how I did the podcast. I know that you start at the beginning because you should, but I think each episode gets better and better. So I'm a little biased, but in the beginning, I was trying to follow the rules. Get into a quietest room in the house. Well, I was. So I was in a small room and I was working from a TV tray, mic, script, and laptop. I couldn't see the script. That's some of the reason I sounded like a robot. Daryl, I fixed it. So then I discovered better software and editing techniques. So now I can record anywhere. Start anywhere. The reading of the UN Declaration is necessary, but Google it, read it for yourself, and then jump in and start listening. Remember, I believe that the United States should be leading the world in the fight for human rights, but I don't think we are. And if not us, whom should we follow? China? Russia? Well, let's talk about the 5 top episodes published in 2024. American Idol in no particular order. Episode 1, Reading the UN Declaration of 1948. Actually, it's not the reading of the Declaration, but the history of the Declaration. I talked about the history of the UN Declaration, how the world and the countries came together, remembering Eleanor Roosevelt, who was the chairperson of a committee to come up with these and reiterating the reason that the world decided to implement human rights after the war. The next is introductory episode, an introduction to me and explaining why I did this podcast. But really, it was a test how to record a podcast. Next is episode 4, corrective, reflection and healthcare. I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in the world. Do something. I believe that Americans deserve more. I talked about homelessness. Just recently, I heard on the news that America just surpassed the greatest amount of homelessness in this country. Why are we so surprised? More on that in a later episode next year. Also, I talked about healthcare in America. America needs an improved healthcare system. Period. Our current system is like a freight train speeding towards a brick wall. What are we going to leave for the next generation? I asked, what if? What if we did something radically different that is less expensive, gives better service and services, and is available to all? It's all about the way we're thinking about this problem. I don't want to put square wheels on a car. Maybe we need to reinvent the car. The next episode is episode 6, part 2, Convention on the Rights of a Child, where I talk about child marriage and corporal punishment. I identified obstacles to signing the Convention on the Rights of a Child. America is the only country that has not signed the agreement. Also, we don't have any federal laws, really, that protect our children. Instead, each state has authority to make laws pertaining to its citizens, including children. So, for instance, Delaware is the only state to outlaw child marriage. As a result, we have a ton of different rules and laws, inconsistent. And also in this episode, I talked about my mission trip to the Dominican Republic, the DR. I never imagined that a few hours from Punta Cana, sugar plantations, people, mostly Haitian immigrants, are brought in to live in bateys and live on $4 a week while working 8 to 12-hour shifts in the sugarcane fields. The children born there are not given citizenship. Can you imagine? It makes you think about where you want to spend your money on vacation. And lastly, episode 10, LGBTQ plus issues, gender, and sexuality. In my memory, there were some newspaper articles that were talking about how our female athletes were being discriminated against because they look like men. They don't do a chromosome test on them. No, they do a testosterone test. Apparently, some people just have more testosterone than others. They don't do it in male sports. So what if Michael Jordan had more testosterone than other basketball players? Would he be eliminated from the sport? I doubt it. So why would they eliminate women who are born with more testosterone? Eliminating them, not because they have an Y chromosome, which is indicative of male. They just do it on the levels of a hormone. It's pretty crazy. But anyway, you should go back, educate ourselves on the issues, learn the terms, and if you're not sure, then ask someone. Even if you don't identify as LGBTQ, we can be an ally. Right now in America, there are 527 anti-LGBTQ plus bills. This is so crazy to me. Don't we have more to figure out, like how to get better health care to everyone instead of trying to exclude difference? Let me talk for a minute about looking forward, about 2025. No year-end episode would be complete without telling what I hope to do in 2025. No, not a resolution, but an earnest attempt to serve by continuing the podcast for starters. Now, I feel that everything can be viewed through the lens of human rights, remembering our shared humanity. Remember my quote this year. It's not our differences that divide us. Rather, it's our inability to see our shared humanity despite our differences. We are linked together with every human on the planet and everyone in this country. And to be reminded of this common denominator is heartwarming, heartbreaking, mind-boggling. You are not alone. We must improve this relationship, remembering the words from Amanda Gorman, for there is always a light. If only we are brave enough to see it. If only we are brave enough to be it. We have tools. The UN Declaration of 1948. We have our Constitution, the Ninth Amendment, the Sleeping Hero. Let's be the change. Maya Angelou reminds us that the easiest way that people give up their rights is when they don't think that they have any. I'm telling you that we have rights, so let's get to it. I'm committed to being a student of life, learning and listening for topics that involve our human rights. Talk about different ways to bring us all on the gravy train that is America. Let's stand for something. Let's be revolutionary in the way we treat each other. So for now, that's it. Thank you again for listening. Listen, subscribe, and pass it along. Happy New Year. Until next time, be revolutionary, be human.